Hello boxing fans, Anthony with Glory Days Games, and this video is in response to the rules and questions thread on the Delphi forums regarding the Glory Days boxing game. And I really just wanted to kind of make this video to give an overview of some of the questions and clarifications, just kind of have them all in one place where I can provide examples as well as just answering a post in the forum, which sometimes I think is easier to follow. So for these examples, we'll use Jack Johnson and Denver Ed Martin as our fighters. And I'll also be going over the optional rules, which I will cover toward the end of, or at the end of the video. So the main, or a lot of the questions have come up regarding what to do during toe-to-toe exchanges. So prior to getting to that, we'll just go through the basic exchange or segment where one fighter has offensive control and one fighter has defensive control. So in a scenario, Johnson rolls more stars than Denver Ed Martin, so he is on the offense. You would then roll the 2d10 or 2d10 and the 1d20 for Jackson's offensive action, and again reference his power rating, a 3 or less when Martin is clear-headed. If Martin happens to be stunned in that segment, you would then go to the power rating after the slash to determine whether a possible knockdown occurs. Of course, cuts 19 to 20 are always going to be a cut chance. The one clarification I wanted to provide here is on the fighter who is on defense. So if Johnson lands punches, obviously you would then roll the 1d20 and reference Martin's appropriate column here under defense. Martin is a split defensive fighter. Sometimes he can block a punch, sometimes he has lapses, as opposed to Johnson, who is very good defensively and from 1 to 7 will always block a punch, or fireman Jim Flynn, who is abysmal defensively and will always allow additional punches to land. So that is the normal resolution, and the normal resolution, of course, with a miss is you would then roll a counter opportunity for the fighter who is on defense, and in this case Martin would have 1 to 5 to land either 2 punches led by a hook or 2 punches led by a cross. Now where you do not use the defensive or counter checks is whenever there is a possible knockdown or cut. So in those scenarios, you would go straight to either a chin check or a cut rating check. So just to wrap it up, Johnson rolls above his power rating, lands a classic jab cross hook, 3 punches land. For Martin, you would then roll to see if he blocked or added to that. If Johnson whiffed, then you would then roll to see if Martin countered. If Johnson landed and rolled a 3 or less on the 1d20, you would not do a defensive check. You would go straight to a chin KD check to see if Martin was knocked down or stunned. If Jack Johnson had a potential cut, you would not do a defensive check. You would go straight to the cut rating and roll to see if Martin rolled a 7 or less. If he did, he would have a facial injury, and then you would roll the 1d20 again, check the cut swelling chart. So that's just a clarification there. Same thing with a foul. If a foul occurs, you do not do a defensive check. You simply resolve the foul. And logic there is that the referee is going to, once a foul does occur, he's going to step in immediately and will take time during that segment, giving either a warning or deducting a point, whatever the case may be, which would basically take up the segment and would not allow the other fighter time to counter or block or have continuous action. So those are the clarifications for a segment where one fighter is in control, one is not. On toe-to-toe exchanges, first of all, to clarify on a toe-to-toe exchange is considered a simultaneous offensive action, and a couple of questions have come up regarding do you still do counters and blocks, etc. The answer to that is no, you would not. You would do only resolution of each fighter's offensive action on a toe-to-toe. Again, the fighter with momentum, meaning whoever had the most punches landed or who had momentum in the previous segment, they would go first. You would resolve their offensive actions, and then the second fighter's offensive actions in terms of punches landed and missed. If a knockdown or cut potentially occurs for either or both fighters, or any combination of those two, you would first resolve the punches landed for both fighters, and then come back, and then starting with the fighter with momentum, resolve the knockdown, meaning if Johnson had momentum, allow both fighters to get their punches credited, and then do the chin check on Denver Ed Martin. If both fighters had a knockdown chance in this example, again, you would resolve Johnson's first, since he had momentum, meaning you would do the chin check on Martin. If Martin was sent down or stunned, he would not get the chance to knock Johnson down. The only time a simultaneous knockdown can occur during the same segment in Glory Days boxing is if it comes up on the rare event chart, which is extremely rare. If Johnson missed or rolled above the chin check for Martin, then Martin would get a chance to knock Johnson down, and you would do the chin check on Johnson's card. For cuts, two cuts can occur during the same segment. So if a potential cut comes up, you would go back, first resolve the cut for Martin if Johnson had momentum, and if it was 7 or less, resolve the cut or swelling on Martin's card. Then if Johnson also was potentially cut, would roll to see if it was a 3 or less, and then resolve the cut or swelling on Johnson's card. A knockdown occurs on one and a cut on the other. So Johnson has momentum, has a potential knockdown, and Martin has a potential cut. The cut can still occur. The only thing that cannot occur simultaneously during a toe-to-toe exchange is a knockdown. And again, you cannot block punches when they land, and you do not counter if one or both fighters miss. So that is the clarification on toe-to-toe. The basic rule on a toe-to-toe exchange for a clinch is if either fighter rolls a clinch during a toe-to-toe exchange, that nullifies all punches landed, including knockdown chances, fouls, or cuts for the entire segment. The optional clinch rule is if the fighter with momentum rolls the clinch, the segment ends, nobody gets punches landed. If the fighter that does not end the segment lands the clinch or rolls the clinch, the fighter with momentum would get credit for a single punch scored, and then the segment would end. Knockdowns and cuts would still be nullified, and the logic there is if Johnson has momentum, scores a potential knockdown, and Martin rolls a clinch on his toe-to-toe, it would be considered Johnson got off a little bit quicker, got one punch in, shook up Martin, he grabbed, and Johnson is unable to follow up and land the kill shot to knock him down. So that is how that works. And again, that is the optional rule on clinches. Addressing knockdowns, multiple knockdowns in the same round. This is another optional rule. And this rule takes into account the fact that if a fighter goes down once in a single segment, he is going to be a little more susceptible to getting short-circuited or knocked out. So if multiple knockdowns occur during the same round, instead of doing the regular chin check for a knockout on the second knockdown, you would go to the fatigued chin KO rating. So in this case, if Johnson sent Martin down once, he got up, sends him down again. This time, instead of rolling, and a 6 or less stops the fight via KO, an 11 or less would stop the fight via KO. Conversely, if Johnson was a victim of 2 knockdowns against Denver Ed Martin, not likely, but you never know. First knockdown, you would do a 2, or the fresh column for the chin KO check. The second knockdown, you would do a under the fatigue column, so a 5 or less to get up from a knockdown for a second knockdown in the same round. So that is the clarification on that particular rule, which again, that was added after the game released. It is on the Delphi forums, and also it is added to the updated rule book that is on the Facebook group page, Glory Days Boxing Facebook group page, and also SidelineStrategy.com website under Glory Days Boxing Resources. Some other clarifications or optional rules that I wanted to address. Oh, on a cut, again, we mentioned on a cut chance, you do not try and block punches. Stoppages, the optional cut rule or stoppage rule for cuts. So if a cut occurs once and then the fighter has a potential cut come up again and rolls under their cut rating. So we'll use Denver Ed Martin again. So Johnson cuts him in round 2 and it's a cut above the left eye. In round 6, Johnson has another potential cut. Again, Ed Martin rolls under his cut rating of 7. So before you would check for a new cut, you would check to see if the existing cut over his left eye had reopened. To do that, you'd roll the 1d20, and if it was a 10 or less, the existing cut would reopen. If it was above a 10, then you would roll one more time to check either for a new injury, swelling, or a different cut perhaps. And there is a hierarchy listed in the rule book there too. So if that does occur, say Denver Ed Martin has multiple cuts. So he's got swelling over the right eye, cut over the left eye, and a gash over the left eye. You would still only do one roll to see if one of those reoccurred. So he gets cut a 4th time or has a potential for a cut or a swelling the 4th time. Roll the 1d20. If it was 10 or less, you would then go by the following hierarchy when checking to see what reoccurred. So that would be a gash over the eye, cut over the eye, cut on cheek, bloody nose, and finally swelling. So in that scenario, since he had a gash, a cut, and swelling, the gash would take precedent and the gash over his eye would be considered reopened. And you would then go on and check the cut swelling chart on the game board to see if there was a potential stoppage, if that was the 2nd or 3rd time it had been reopened. So that hopefully clarifies that a little bit. And again, that is the optional rule for cuts. The base rule is you just roll each time, and if you roll a duplicate of a cut, then it would be considered a reoccurrence. If not, then a new cut or swelling comes up. The optional stamina rule. This one's pretty straightforward. I really haven't had questions on that, but I'll throw it in there anyway. First clarification, of course, the stamina number before the slash is for 10 round or less fights. Stamina number after the slash is for 12 or 15 round fights. The base rule there is if a fighter runs out of stamina, you apply the adjustments, meaning power, chin KD, chin KO, will, check all to the 2nd column at the beginning of the next round. The optional rule there is at the moment they run out of stamina during the current round, you would start to apply those penalties. And sometimes that won't make a difference. If they run out of stamina with 40 seconds left in the round, probably not going to make a difference. If they run out of stamina only 40 seconds into the round and they have over 2 minutes to fight, that still can make a difference. So that just dials in the realism with fatigue just a little bit more. So that is an example there. The other optional rules here, we covered cuts and clinching, we covered the knockdown, and stamina. So that basically covers, there's not a lot. The only other optional rule is one that I probably would use the least, and that's the TKO rule. The standard TKO rule, and first to clarify TKOs. If a fighter is knocked down or stunned, the next segment, of course, the fighter who did the knocking down or stunning has an unopposed action, and the other fighter is considered defenseless, just trying to survive, basically. So just to clarify, if 3 punches or more land during a segment, so Martin is hurt, Johnson rolls and lands 4 blows. If they land 3 or more on a stunned fighter, you would then automatically do a will check for a TKO there. So in that scenario, you would roll the 1d20, and 6 or less, the fight would be stopped because Martin has a will of 6. If he is fatigued, his will is 11. The other time a TKO occurs is if over 25 blows land during a single round. Not 25 exactly, it has to be more. So the optional TKO rule there is you can make a will check to see if the fighter is stopped after 25 punches are landed. And if you're using this rule, basically you would double the value of the fighter's current will rating. So if Martin still had energy left or stamina, and you did this optional rule, Johnson scored his 26th punch, you would make the will check, and Martin would have a will of 12, so it would have to be 13 or more for the fight to continue. And again, that's probably the only optional rule I really don't use, but it's there if you desire to use it. Other clarifications, one with the scoring. So a fighter who is losing the round gets a knockdown. Again, just a reminder, because I've noticed in some videos and also had a question, anytime a fighter losing the round scores a knockdown, if that punch differential is 8 or less, it is automatically going to be a 10-8 round for the fighter that got the knockdown, even though he is losing the round. If it's 9-19, you could give the fighter who is losing the round a 10-9 round, and the logic there is he was losing the round so decisively that the knockdown only tilts it in his favor, 10-9. And then, of course, if it's 20-plus punch differential, it would be a 10-7 for the high score and a 10-9 for the low score. So that's just a clarification on knockdowns occurring when a fighter is losing the round. You always go to the knockdown column on the judges' scoring, which is the very last column. Rare events. Whenever a rare event is rolled during a segment, even on a toe-to-toe exchange, it takes precedence over all other actions. So any punches landed, any potential knockdowns, cuts, etc. do not occur. The rare event, because it often affects both fighters, is the only thing that occurs that segment. And just to clarify, again, if an event that does come up is followed by an asterisk, that is considered an extremely rare event, and only one of those of any kind can occur during a fight. So a fighter, if he breaks his arm, that's considered a rare event, and if later a rare event comes up again and a 96 is rolled, which fighter is immediately disqualified for an egregious foul, that event does not occur because it's also followed by an asterisk. So it's not a duplication of the same rare event, it's any event followed by an asterisk. You can only have one event of that type per fight. So if that happens a second time, it would be considered a clinch. You would move to the next segment. And I believe that covers, again, a lot of the questions came in on toe-to-toe exchanges. And so that's really what I wanted to address the most in this video. And also, too, it's got, in the back page of the rule book, does have a flow chart that goes over each stage of the fight, and talks about the toe-to-toe exchange as well. And it does reference in the flowchart defensive checks, and I think that's where the confusion was occurring. But yeah, there will be no blocks or counters during the toe-to-toe exchange. And then it's also got some reminders at the bottom of the page regarding toe-to-toe exchanges in terms of momentum and resolving knockdowns, cuts, etc. So that is basically it. Just some things that will be forthcoming. Again, I've started rating the lightweights, so that set is well underway. I've got 18 of the 100 rated at this point. So going at this pace, as long as I don't have anything that becomes a big time sink, I actually will probably have the lightweights done well before the end of June. And in conjunction with that, I'll also be making a more robust event chart available, where there's actually going to be 2 columns of events, and that will be available if you order the printed set of lightweights. I'll just include that as part of the package free. That will also be a PDF up on the Sideline Strategy website at some point, and also the Facebook page. And what that'll do also is it'll kind of clean up the main game chart a little bit and leave a little bit more space. And you'll see I've already got the main game chart designed for that. But again, that's just something optional that you can use or not use that will be available. So, and then on top of that, the strategy cards. I've got a couple of people testing those right now, and those will be uploaded shortly. And again, I would recommend using the strategy cards sparingly, no more than 2 per fighter per fight, only because they can skew results, but they add a little bit of intrigue. And if you happen to be playing head-to-head with someone, which you can do with this game, one fighter controls a red corner, one controls a blue, it actually allows you to be a little bit more interactive during the bout. And that's probably to me anyway, the place that they would be used most if you happen to be playing the game with somebody, which is possible with this game. And either way, solitaire or head-to-head, they can be utilized as well. And then finally, the fast action cards, still waiting for an estimate back from the printer. And again, as a reminder, if you don't know, the fast action cards are only going to be utilized to take the place of the ring general roll, the 2d6 rolls, and they will also be used for timing the round. So you basically shuffle the deck, count out 9 fast action cards per round, flip one, do your control, and then roll the dice for the rest of the results as you do now. So that's just an option for people who may want to play with those instead of using, that cuts out basically 9 dice rolls around, and that can speed up the action. And again, some people don't want to roll dice. I did not incorporate the other results in fast action cards, only because I don't think you get the degree of randomness doing that. And to get that degree of randomness, I would have to create a huge fast action deck, which really wouldn't be cost efficient. But the fast action cards will be available for free download if you want to do the PDF and cut them yourself. If you want to have me do the printing, there will be a print option available. And basically there, I'll just ask you to cover my cost of the printer and the shipping charges. So either preference or either way is fine there. And again, I'm still waiting for the estimate back on the printers there. So that's kind of clarification on some of the rules, mainly again the toe-to-toe exchanges and how to resolve those and handle the different events that come into play. And also a look at what is coming in the future for Glory Days Boxing. Last thing I want to address, actually I think we are good. I think that pretty much covers everything. So get back to doing some fights later on, back to the universe that I've started, which currently has 41 fighters in, which will be adding new fighters and have fighters retiring as time goes along. So we'll get a couple more videos up on that. And also in terms of the channel, need to get some baseball back in there. I'll probably get payoff pitch baseball game in or two, still doing the 1969 Fergie Jenkins replay. So again, thanks to everybody for supporting the game, and a lot of great questions and good feedback, and keep it coming. Again, we appreciate you, and until next time, keep rolling for that knockout, and have a good day, everyone.